the topic of my presentation today is let's start with why. That's my why. Every one of these people have entrusted me in some way their financial future. You can sit down. They've entrusted their financial future to me in some way. That is my why. What is your why? Why do you do what you do? I've put together some thoughts here today. Kind of wrote out a little script so I don't ad-lib. So I'm just going to read and talk and present to you all. As I prepared for my presentation today, I kept thinking about the specifics of what I would share. I originally thought I would discuss the individual side of my business and how I help married couples approaching retirement. I thought it would be interesting to discuss the Social Security options couples face. The problem is you may not have thought it was interesting. I thought I would also discuss IRAs, 401ks, and other investment accounts. I put together a presentation entitled 10 Steps to Financial Security. But I had a one-to-one with Greg, and he said, facts tell, stories sell. So I set that aside. I changed my mind. I then shifted to wanting to discuss with you the business side of what I do. I thought I would share with you how I help businesses that do not offer a 401k plan to its employees to help them set one up. Likewise, I also review company 401k plans to evaluate their fees and liability protection to determine if the current plan is the best plan for their owners and employees. I want you to keep me in mind as you're meeting with a business owner. Ask them if they offer their employees a 401k. If they don't, ask them if they would like to meet with someone to evaluate their options. If they do offer a plan, ask them when was the last time they actually evaluated that plan. I can tell you the plan that I offer is an affordable plan for both employees and owners without the liability concern most business owners face. That is all I'm actually going to share with you about individual planning and business 401ks. I ultimately changed my topic for this presentation to let's start with why. Why is it that I do what I do and the way that I do it? I recently listened to a BNI podcast, go figure, that convicted me of this title. I will not be sharing with you so much of the how and the what I do, because you're not going to remember that after our meeting. Please schedule a one-to-one to learn more about the specifics. Today, I want to share with you the why. I want to take you back to when I was 4 or 5 years old. At that time, my family had recently moved from Chicago to a mobile home park called Shannon Shores, about an hour and a half south of Chicago. I was born in Park Ridge, Illinois. In my younger years, I grew up in Chicago. However, my parents did not want to raise me in Chicago. They did not want me to attend public school in Chicago. They wanted to get me out of the city. This mobile home park was sparsely used during the winter, so there were a few months out of the year when the owner of the property would turn off the water to sections of the park. This is before internet where you could do research. Well, we did not know this when we moved, but we moved to the side of the park in which the water was turned off for the winter. Also, my dad left a good paying job in Chicago in order to get his family out of the city. See, my father, and if you look at the packet that I gave you, my parents are on the back page because they're part of the why of what I do. My father is an Irish immigrant. He lived in Ireland until he was 10. He never knew his father in Ireland, and his mother could not take care of him properly. His mother in Ireland was the town drunk. When he was 10 years old, my father boarded a plane at the Shannon Airport on the western side of Ireland and flew across the Atlantic to begin a new life without anyone else on the plane with him. Imagine your 10-year-old doing that. He had no family with him until he landed in Chicago to meet his cousins, who would now be his parents. My father learned lessons from this experience, and I believe one of them was to get out of situations that are not going to serve you in the long run. Staying in Ireland would have been the easiest decision. I mean, come on, getting on an airplane and going across the Atlantic. But being adopted by his cousins, my grandparents, in Chicago was the best thing for my family and ultimately for me in the long run. He would have never met his wife, who happened to be his next-door neighbor, my mom. Likewise, moving from Chicago to Shannon Shores was not an easy decision, but it was the best decision for our family. The time spent at Shannon Shores was difficult. My dad was not able to hold down meaningful employment. I remember going to food banks, collecting food stamps, and not having running water during these times. I remember eating my fair share of peanut butter, government cheese, and if you know the government cheese boxes, yep, they're not just to collect baseball cards, and cream corn. That was our staple. It was a challenge, but it made me and my family stronger. The other thing it was doing for me was forming me. I grew up poor, but I did well in school. I worked hard and I was diligent about my schoolwork. I lived on a few farms, never actually farmed, but we lived on farms, and I played sports. I was a good pitcher in Little League, just not anymore, it hurts my arm. I enjoyed attending high school football games with my father, and I played football as well in high school. I especially remember crying watching the Cubs in the 1984 League Championship Series lose to the San Diego Padres and fail to make it to the World Series. I'm glad I didn't know at that time that it would be 32 years before the Cubs would actually win the World Series. I learned the value of hard work from my parents. I learned the characteristics of determination and perseverance as well. I learned the value of setting a goal and the satisfaction of accomplishing it, even if it takes you 108 years. Another set of lessons I learned started Christmas of 1989. My grandmother had passed away Easter of 1989, and my grandfather was living by himself in Chicago. My father received a phone call that Grandpa Jacobs had gotten sick and could no longer take care of himself. My father left the day after Christmas to go to Chicago to take care of Grandpa. My father had to take time away from his job and our family to tend to my grandfather around the clock. He had to do things for my grandfather that a son should not have to do. We did not know when he would be back home, and we did not know when we would be able to see my father or Grandpa again. I remember it being a very stressful and difficult time for our family. The next time I saw Grandpa was the evening of January 13th. My brother and I visited with him in the hospital. I remember clearly my father and brother washing and shaving Grandpa's face. It was an indelible moment in my formidable years. Bernard Jacobs died the next day, January 14th, a few months shy of his 80th birthday. How does this relate to the why of what I do as a financial planner? First, in my role as a financial planner, I see myself as first and foremost as an advocate for those going through difficult times of transition in their lives. You see, my father was an only child. However, my grandfather's family never really saw my father as legitimate because he was adopted. Because of this, after my grandmother died in 1989, there were relatives who persuaded my grandfather to change many of the promises he had made to my father. Sometime after my grandmother died, my grandpa changed many of the beneficiary arrangements on his life insurance and bank accounts instead of leaving them as my father. However, when my grandpa fell ill, it was the responsibility of my father to take care of him, not the relatives that wanted the money. They wanted my grandpa's money, but they did not want to treat him with dignity and respect during his last days. Many of these issues could have been discussed and worked through if they were working with a financial planner who worked in the role of a fiduciary as I do for my clients. A financial planner could have discussed life insurance, estate planning, investments, and beneficiary arrangements with my grandparents. See, my grandpa was a very private person, as many were of the greatest generation. He did not want anyone to know his business. Had he been working with someone instead of trying to do it all himself, he would have not fallen prey to those who were trying to make a money grab at the time of his death. His wishes and desires would have been implemented. I founded Step by Step Financial in 2008. I graduated with a theology degree in 2000. Those two things actually come together quite nicely, and served as a director of youth ministry in Memphis from 2000 to 2005. I always enjoy working with people and figures. However, I never thought of it as a career until someone introduced me to the profession in 2005. I had a poverty mentality. I grew up poor, so discussing portfolios, life insurance, long-term care, tax planning, and estate planning was something only rich people did. I never knew I could take the joy I had of serving others and the skill I have with working with figures and combine them into a career. Not only a career, but a business that now supports my large family. The goal of Step by Step Financial is to provide a holistic tax and financial planning service to those transitioning from work to retirement or from retirement to end-of-life decisions. It is my desire to provide at Step by Step Financial the service my grandfather should have received on his last months of his earthly journey. Did anyone ask him about end-of-life decisions such as organ donation, gifting of assets, or arrangements for his funeral? Did anyone discuss with him the beneficiaries on his life insurance? Could have my grandparents been served by a discussion about long-term care insurance? I'm not sure if they did or not, but from the difficulty my father went through in the transition period after my grandfather died, I would assume not. Almost done. As you think about my business and you say, who can I refer to Kevin? I want you to think about people in transition. Think about that couple that has been married a long time and one of the spouses has recently passed. The surviving spouse would be an excellent person for me to meet. Think about that long-term teacher that is at your child's school who's retiring this year. Has anyone spoke to her about long-term financial planning decisions? Think about your loved ones who are going through a transition. Maybe you know of someone who desires to give to their church in extraordinary ways, but they're not sure how to do it. We all have a why. I hope the short story I've shared with you about my family helps you to understand my why. I want to leave you with this thought. Remember, it's not the what and how you do. Remember, it's not the what and the how you do it, but it's the why you do it that people remember. I want you to think about my father and grandpa when you think of my business. This is the why of what I do. For all of us, it starts with why. What is your why?